Welcome to our class on pivot tables. Along with Power Pivot, pivot tables are the most technologically sophisticated component in Excel. It makes an excellent alternative to creating many complex formulas. Today I'm going to first start with a blank worksheet and download the Access Cells Data database into the worksheet. We'll come here to Data, Get Data, From Database, and From an Access Database. You'll need to navigate to where you downloaded the Cells Data database in the past or re-download it from the course website. We'll go ahead and select that and say Import. And now we can select which database table we'd like. It's the cells table. And instead of just loading it as data into our worksheet, we'll go ahead and load to. And then that'll give us the option of selecting a pivot table. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll just place it in the existing worksheet and say OK. This is going to import the data behind the scenes and automatically create a pivot table on that data. You won't ever see the data itself in this case. Go ahead and close that window out. And now let's go ahead and construct a pivot table. Hopefully this section is just a review for most of you. If it's not, you'll be able to learn many things about pivot tables, but I'd encourage you to go out and read your book, especially if you're not already familiar with pivot tables. So let's look at our cells by location. I'll grab location, drag it down to the rows here, and our cells date I'll drag over here into the columns. Now mine came automatically grouped for me. If you're using an older version of Excel, it might not have done that. If it didn't, you can simply come up here and right click and group or ungroup to see the individual dates. If you're having trouble grouping these into dates, it might be that the underlying data contains something other than a date, even perhaps a blank. We'll go ahead and right click and we'll regroup that, and then we can choose to do it in months, days, quarters, whatever. Here we'll just go ahead and do months. You may have noticed that I no longer have my plus sign here. Let me go ahead and ungroup or regroup and include the days in there also. And now I can see all the dates and I can further collapse those if I wanted to. So it really depends how you want to group things. In this case, just the months is fine. Next, I'll come and grab amount and put it down here in values. And now we have the values of all the cells for the different months for the different locations that we have. Now I might want to format this information, and I can right click to do that. And I can either format the cells that formats the underlying cell, in this case D5, or I can format the number. If I format the number, that'll stick with us a little bit longer. This way, if I have larger or smaller groups, different rows, it'll keep that number format. So I'll go ahead and choose that. Maybe I'll just choose number. I'll get rid of the decimal places, but I will use a comma to separate thousands. Say OK. That makes it a little bit more readable. Let's first start by trying to answer some questions. Hopefully this is a review for you, but you can learn a lot even if you haven't used pivot tables. When I ask questions, go ahead and stop the video and try to solve it on your own, and then I'll work it out with you. Okay, so for the first question, what was the revenue for shirts in the month of November? What was the revenue for shirts in the month of November? Did you get $435? If so, I think that's the right answer. How do we find that one? Well, we can simply get rid of our location here and go ahead and just add our item there. Go down to shirts and come over to November, and it looks like we had $435. Okay, how many shirts were sold in November? Not the dollar amount, the number of shirts. How did you solve that one? Well, you probably want to come here and use the drop down and the value filled settings, and here you can simply do a count to get the number of shirts. It looks like 12 shirts were sold during November. Okay, getting a little bit more complicated. How many shirts were sold in September in the San Jose store? Did you get 2? You can do this many different ways. For instance, if we wanted to, we could take our location, we could use it as a filter, and then we could just look at the San Jose store. And you can see that there are just 2 shirts sold in September in the San Jose store. We could also have put the location under the category, shirt San Jose 2, or we could say San Jose, the location first, and then come down to shirts and find it. Usually there's lots of different ways in pivot tables to find the information that we're interested in. Okay, next question. Who were the sales reps that sold those shirts in San Jose? Did you say Sean and Philip? If so, you're correct. Now, some of you may have taken the sales rep and just added it down to the row here. That would work just fine. But we can also just come here, and I want to show you that you can click on any of this detail amount here, and you can double click, and that'll actually open a new worksheet and show you the underlying data. Now, that's pretty handy. It allows us to see that Sean and Philip were the ones that had sold those 2 shirts. It allows us to keep our sheets or pivot tables a little bit cleaner at the expense of adding these new sheets that you have to clean up when you're done with them. Okay, next question. What percent of its revenue over those 3 months was made in the Orem store in October? What percent of its revenue over those 3 months was made in the Orem store in October? Go ahead and try to solve that on your own. Welcome back. Did you get 32.24%? So we can get rid of item here and come back to just that. We'll need to also change our value filled settings here to sum up. And we'll also want to come over here to show values as and do a calculation. We want probably a percentage of the row total. We'll say okay there. 32.24% of its total was made during the month of October for the Orem store. Now, I've been using this drop down here, but we can also just right click and get access to those summarized values by and also the show values as. Okay, next question. Of the total sales of all stores for the month of September, what percentage of revenue was sold in the Provo store? Again, of the total sales of all stores for the month of September, what percentage of revenue was sold in the Provo store? Did you say 44.21%? If so, perfect. Let's go ahead and just change how we're showing our values. Instead of doing a percent of row total, let's do a percent of column total. And you can see here that Provo sold 44.21% of the total sales for September. Okay, of all the sales reps, who sold the most and what percentage of total sales did they sell? Again, of all the sales reps, who sold the most and what percentage of total sales did they sell? Let's go ahead and work this one out together. For our columns, let's put in our sales date. That looks good. For our rows, let's put in our sales reps. We have the total sum right there. And currently, it's the percent of column. So it looks like we have the information we need. It looks like Jeff sold 33.72% of all sales. He sold the most. Okay, but what was the main contributor to Jeff's sales? To solve this one, I might simply just come down, throw my items underneath, scroll down to Jeff again, and it looks like clearly bicycles was the greatest percentage of that total. Now currently this is a total percentage of everything sold across the store. It's of this total column. Now if we want to just get the percentage of bicycles for Jeff's sales only, we could actually do that by right clicking, coming up to show values as, and coming down to percent of parent total, and then it'll allow us to select which parent we want to compare against, and in this case against sales rep is perfect. We'll say okay, and it looks like Jeff then made 81.24% of his sales from selling bicycles. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of item here again. And we'll actually just clear that out as well. Of the total sales, how much less did Tim sell in November than Jeff? So how much less did Tim sell than Jeff? Jeff looks like he's our high salesperson. Okay, we could do the calculation right here, but better yet, we can simply right click and we can show values as, and we can do a difference from, not a percent difference from, but just the raw value difference from. And then it says, okay, what's the base field you're comparing against? Well, we're comparing sales reps to sales reps. And then who do you want to compare against? In this case, we have all of our sales reps there, but Jeff is the one we want to compare against, and so we say okay. And you can see that Tim sold $2,175 less than Jeff. Okay, great. Before we wrap up this section, I want to go ahead and show you one other thing. Let's go ahead and remove our values, just remove those calculations. You'll notice that we have both an Analyze and a Design tab up here when we're on the pivot table itself. This is kind of similar to data tables. So we can change the design if we want. We can also do things like analyze different things as well. And under the Analyze, you'll notice we have the slicers that now hopefully you're familiar with. Let's go ahead and select slicers for item and location and maybe sales rep. Say okay there. And now we can easily filter by all of those things as well without having to explicitly put those up here in filters. So if we wanted to just see Jeff sales, we can click on just Jeff. Or if we wanted to see, let's say, Bob, Dave, Jane, and Jeff, we can do that. Or we can clear those out and maybe we can choose to focus on just bicycles. And we can see who sold how much in bicycles over the different months. I want to also point out here that, on these slicers, when you select something, you'll notice over here, you can see those that sold bicycles, but you can also see those that didn't, or those that don't match the other filter criteria will be kind of grayed out right here. So we can very easily see that, oh, there's about $6,000 sold in bicycles across those 3 months. Of course, these slicers make it easy for even the novice user to get in and filter data and see what's going on in the individual transactions. Okay, I want to show you one other thing. Let's go ahead and switch this up just a little bit. Let me change sales rep, move that up to filter, and let's go ahead and maybe put items down here. We'll clear out our other filters so that we get a list of these different items for each sales rep. Now, sometimes you want to take this information and you want to print it out. You can very easily create a pivot table for each of the individual sales rep or whatever's up here in your filters by doing the following. If you come up to Analyze, you can come over here to the pivot table, drop that down, come under Options, and you can select this Show Report Filter Pages. And look what happens at the bottom of my sheet here when I click that. I'll go ahead and say, yep, create a new page, a new report for every single individual rep. I just click OK, and all of a sudden I get new sheets for everyone. And then I could simply, let's say, print these out and hand them out or put in the mailbox of the individual reps. That's pretty powerful as well. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into today's class using the Excel worksheet that's provided on the course website.